We recently went over the story of one of the biggest IPO failures in history, the infamous tale of Pets.com. In that video, I briefly mentioned the fact that Pets.com ended up being a bit ahead of its time. Because a mere 11 years later, another business came out from the shadows, the crevices of the young internet minds, a business that, on paper, looked a little similar to the dot-com bubble tragedy, Pets.com, but in fact, a business that went on to be the biggest e-commerce acquisition of all time. This is the Chewy story. Chewy! If somehow you don't know, let me explain. What the heck is Chewy? Chewy Incorporated is an online retailer / e-commerce business focused on selling pet supplies, pet food, premium pet goods, and all other pet-related products. As of right now, Chewy is notably the largest, most favorable way to order pet products online. They've even passed Amazon in pet food and pet supply market share. That's the little book company that Jeff Bezos used to run. Chewy had a 45% revenue growth in 2020. They had a 56% growth in gross profit in 2020 and over 200% growth in share price. The company is on fire, and they pretty much have been since the day they came to life. Comparing to our Pets.com story, this is already a big difference. They came to market and people were interested. Their business grew, their gross profit grew, and since going public in 2019, their market cap grew. Company growth. What a magical thing. But this is the very broad picture. There's a lot more to the story than meets the eye. Here are 2 important facts for you. Chewy.com has had incredibly strong revenue growth since its creation, of course. But fun fact, Pets.com from 1999 to 2000 grew their revenue by over 4,000%. It just so happened that with that, they also grew their expenses to cost them substantially more than that revenue they were bringing in. So basically, don't trust revenue growth alone as an indicator. The other potentially scary fact for you, Pets.com was a money-losing company, obviously. But in fact, Chewy is also a money-losing company. Chewy has not yet had a single truly profitable quarter in history as of right now at this very moment. But here's the lesson of the day. I'm not qualified to be teaching lessons. Let's call it the secondhand wisdom of the day from Chris. Catchy. The same 2 facts on paper can mean very different things in actuality. For things to all make sense, it's time you learn the full story. I want to introduce you to a couple of inspiring founders and give you the deets. Let's take a look at the origins of Chewy. Let's begin. Immerse yourself. The year is 2011. Obama was in his first term as president. Amazon was well on their path to rule the world. We were all still recovering from the great financial crisis. And while all this was going down over in South Florida, 2 young and spry entrepreneurs were in the midst of beginning the project that would become the next 10 years of their lives. These 2 are Ryan Cohen and Michael Day. Ryan met Michael in 2011 in a Java chat room trying to find programmers to help with an affiliate site of his at the time. Very romantic. Ryan Cohen must have been a persuasive son of a gun because at that point, Michael Day dropped out of the University of Georgia to join forces with Ryan. That year, they combined all their money to officially start their online business together. And that business was, you guessed it, an online jewelry sales company. They collectively put together $150,000 and the journey began. Except it didn't last long, because after going to their first official trade show together, they unanimously decided that they didn't like jewelry and that this was a stupid idea. And that was that. The 2 went their own separate ways and no one's heard from either one ever since. We sure have fun here, don't we? We're just goofing around. They sold all their jewelry inventory for 80 cents on the dollar and eventually came up with the real idea, the passion project, the business that was then called Mr. Chewy. The timeline's a bit screwy on Mr. Chewy, but basically it seems to have been a mix of the realization at that jewelry trade show as well as an epiphany within Ryan's mind. The epiphany came to Cohen when he was in a local pet store, realizing that this experience didn't exist online, that in fact this was his calling, not the jewels of the web. The digital embodiment of a local pet store scaled to the e-com world was an idea he was actually passionate about. As one of those loving dog folks himself, being the owner of a little toy poodle named Ty Lee, the man knew the struggle of being a loving dog owner in a growingly online-centric shopping world. The market was scattered. No one had dared try to poke the business model that smelled so similar to Pets.com. Plus, there was that little book company that pretty much held all the market share in the online pet product space at this time. But these two wild stallions weren't scared. Ryan Cohen had a model that distinguished them from Amazon. It was simple. They would be absolutely, completely focused on the customer experience. And with that, in Ryan's own words, the pet industry was big and growing, moving from mass market to premium. It was clear that the opportunity was huge. And so, the Chewy journey began. Let's focus on some important details. Starting out, these suckers had nothing. This is not a classic case of a small loan of $1 million to get things started or anything like that. This was a case of Ryan and Michael put their own money in, hired Ryan's friend Alan Attell, and the three of them did goddamn everything at the company. Let's pause there to compare real quick. If you compare to Pets.com on that fact alone, it's a whole different beast. Pets.com was flooded with cash at inception. They didn't need to prove a thing before raising capital and proceeding to rapidly burn through millions of dollars very quickly. That was the nature of the dot-com bubble. But 2011 investors knew better than to throw money at some unproven dot-com company with a striking resemblance to Pets.com. Another important detail to focus on up in here, I've said it before and I'll emphasize it again. The biggest priority of Chewy was to be customer obsessed. Not just convenient like Amazon, but focused on being the absolute best customer experience mankind has ever known. In the early days, the tiny team's first priority was top quality, top speed phone operations, live chats online, and emails. This was all done by Ryan, Michael, and Alan, so once they could, that was the first portion of the team they needed to hire out. This customer-first model was really the biggest thing that led to Chewy's explosive success. If you recall in my Pets.com breakdown, one of the biggest flaws was that the company had no distinguishable differences from any of the many other pet supply e-tailers of that time. Eventually they had good marketing, but that didn't change the customer buying experience. Chewy began to do an exceptional job of creating what they eventually referred to as sticky customers, because these dudes created some real deal loyalty. Ryan Cohen was a man with a plan, and that customer prioritization paid off handsomely. But you're probably wondering, so what? They had good customer support? That's it? Oh, wow. Joke's on you now. Let's take a little look at some of the specific customer-first moves made by Chewy. Chewy does not fool around, folks. Customer first. At scale, Chewy spent nearly $1 million a year on postage alone to account for the multi-million handwritten holiday postcards that they send their loyal customers. And of course, the handwritten thank you note for when you make your first purchase with Chewy. If your dog perhaps doesn't care much for the luxury wilderness salmon grain-free dog food you bought for him, no problem. Chewy will give you a full refund and personally suggest a local shelter you should donate the food to so it doesn't go to waste. If you're canceling an auto ship or subscription service because a pet has passed on, Chewy sends flowers directly to your home. If you're lucky one month, then you may just get chosen at random to receive a professional oil painting portrait of your pet. And this isn't even something they offer for sale, mind you, they just give it away for free. Look at these things. Show me the last bundle of flowers you got from Bezos after a loved one passed. The company puts the money in to prioritize the customers above all else. These suckers are here for the long term. They ain't playing the short game. According to Cohen, with his very own words, the focus isn't on making one-off transactions, but on turning customers into lifelong clients. The idea is to wow the customer and to provide a delightful experience where they would never dream of shopping elsewhere. Ryan Cohen knew what was important. It shows. But here was the problem. This is all great. We're in. We believe in you, Ryan. We believe in Chewy. But I don't know if you heard, we're in the future. On their own, Chewy proved what made them special. Cohen proved that he had a long-term plan for success, but that ain't enough. Come on, haven't you seen Shark Tank? The company needed capital to grow. For the first 2 years, Chewy was putting every dime they made right back into the business, growing as much as possible. Ryan, Michael, and Alan were all salary-free because they believed in the long game. But in order to really scale, they needed some investors. The investor struggle. Along the journey of Chewy's first 2 years in existence, Ryan Cohen was denied by over 100 venture capital firms. Denials. That's more denials than views on my last video. Click here to go watch it. But eventually, at long last, like a light at the end of the tunnel, Ryan met with Larry Chang of Volition Capital. At the first meeting, Ryan confidently told Larry his business outlook as well as his expected growth. And finally, after a long and trying 2 years, Larry said no and moved on with his life. Yeah, but seriously, he did. He did deny the company funding. Until 6 months later, when Larry Chang reached back out to Chewy to follow up and hear the results. In that chat, he found out that Chewy had beaten all the sales estimate that Cohen previously gave him. And alas, he was impressed. And now, the real moment you've been waiting for. Larry Chang and Volition Capital signed off to invest $15 million into Chewy. After all that work, all those months, all that VC denial, nobody thought Chewy could touch Amazon. Everyone wanted to compare to Pets.com. Finally, someone believed in the idea. And the rest was history. When you put gasoline on a well-formed fire, it burns bigger. I don't think I did that saying right. Chewy and the all-star team went even harder at this point. They took that funding and perfected everything possible. They took fulfillment in-house. Knowing not a lick about warehouse operations, Ryan and co. sent out thousands of LinkedIn messages explaining the dire situation. Rapid growth, stressful timeframes, passions, customers, all that. Apparently they got a response from roughly 2% of the people they reached out to at this time. But folks, that 2% was committed to the cause. You know you be forming the right team when it's made up of the ones that get you back on the frantic LinkedIn DMs. Those are the keepers. And they were. In 2014, Chewy opened up their first 600,000 square foot fulfillment center in Pennsylvania, rapidly solving crisis after crisis while still making sure to prioritize the customer above all else. Across those next few years, Chewy continued its rapid growth, with grade A management effectively scaling in accordance. They began running strategic marketing over time, optimized 24/7 flawless customer support services, grew their revenue year after year, increased their average lifetime value per customer through the strategic loyalty, and continued to grow their premium supply of pet food and pet supplies as more and more of the pretentious, that's probably the wrong word choice, as the selective brands grew trust in what Chewy was all about. But let us not forget about the acquisition. Immerse yourself. The year is 2017. Trump's the president. The stock market is in bull run mode. The crypto market is in mass hype. Rocket mode. Chewy is continuing to thrive. For the last 2 years, well, more really, but notably for the last 2 years, more and more retailers are dying, with the finger pointed at Bezos. It's becoming a cycle of which retailer will be next. But in a similar regard, with a slightly different flavor to it, long-running retail chain PetSmart had been progressively losing sales to none other than our very own Chewy. PetSmart's parent company, BC Partners, put two and two together and came to a very important realization. They'll never be able to beat the online star. Chewy was an unstoppable force at this point, so rather than fight the battle, it put in a bid to buy the company outright. So in April of 2017, the deal came to life. PetSmart bought Chewy for a grand total of $3.35 billion. This deal ruffled many feathers, friends. Adding billions of dollars worth of debt onto PetSmart's already heaping debt pile of $6 billion for an unprofitable rival was not sexy in the eyes of investors. Chewy was being publicly, regularly compared to that of the long-past Pets.com at this point. Over the short term, PetSmart bonds fell by 50%, with things looking like the end was near for old PetSmart, the next in line on the cycle of retail deaths. But wait, Reversal alert! Boom! PetSmart did not die. Chewy did not die. In fact, quite the opposite. As Ryan Cohen always said, Chewy was in it for the long term. They're a company focused on putting money right back into the business, properly and strategically, which is why Chewy continued to grow hyperspeed over those 2 years. Cut to 2019, Chewy is worth over $11 billion. In June of 2019, the company IPO'd on the New York Stock Exchange, bringing an immediate $10 billion in paper gain profit to PetSmart. That is day one, fool! Almost immediately, PetSmart's bonds were back near peak. PetSmart's day one paper gains were some of the largest private equity-backed IPO profits ever in history. Jump to now. PetSmart is considered one of the greatest private equity and traditional retailer turnarounds in history. They tickled death on the nose and then laughed as they ran back to the land of the living. Since IPO, Chewy share prices are up over 250%. The company has still continued to grow year by year, quarter by quarter, since going public, with a notably incredible 2020 thanks to big-time pet demand onset by the pandemic. But the beautiful thing about pets, they last beyond the pandemic. As Ryan Cohen came to find out in life, being a pet parent ain't a hobby. It's a lifestyle. You can quote me on that one, Ryan. The company has continued to grow immensely, although they're still technically a money-losing business. But they're expected to break even in 2022, then hit official profitability in 2023, baby. The reason for the stretch is because Chewy reinvests so much of its gross profit into growth. With a company growing as much as Chewy, reinvesting continuously into its own growth over just taking profits, it's a sign of a business with the intention of a long and meaningful future. As for Ryan Cohen, the man recently tweeted out a picture of a McDonald's ice cream and had multiple financial news networks speculating over what it all means. With that, his recent position as GameStop Strategy Committee chairman has pretty much single-handedly set forth the start of the 2021 GME explosion, so it's safe to say people are looking forward to the future of Ryan Cohen. TLDR. Chewy is a banger of a company. The premium pet supply e-commerce giant is and always has been a growth-focused, strategic, customer-first business that never feared context. Whether it be the beast of Amazon, the horror of Pets.com past, co-founding madman Ryan Cohen knew better than to let these two things stop his vision for Chewy. He saw the future, he had a plan, and his savvy business mind beat out the likes of Amazon and never fell victim to the faults that ruined Pets.com so brutally. That still felt long. TLDR 2. Chewy, good. Nice run. Smart. I like the stock. Well, friends, that there is my take on the story of Chewy. I personally am very excited to see the future of Chewy, as well as the future of Ryan Cohen and all his passion projects to come. If you enjoyed this little video here, I bet you'll enjoy my take on the downfall of Pets.com too. It's an emotional roller coaster, but it's one heck of a tale. I love to make these immersive little stories on all interesting business things, stock market lore, crypto madness, you name it. If you want to see more things like this in the future, then listen, you're going to want to subscribe and join the party for the fun to come. And if you got suggestions on things you want to see me do on this channel, say them, tell me, comment them, please. And if you're looking to like a YouTube video, then I got just the one for you. It's this one. Yeah, that'd be cool. As always, thank you so very much for watching. That's all I got for you this time. I'll see you real soon. Be safe out there.